Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Today's welcome to the Emotionally Healthy Leader podcast. Great to be with you. I'm with Geri, of course. And today's theme is staying grounded when people are driving you crazy. Staying grounded when people are driving you crazy. And honey, this is the seventh podcast in a row we've done around emotionally healthy relationships. And we've done 7 of the 8 skills so far. And we began, if people think of yourself as a pyramid, the bottom, we began with unleashing the God-given voice, yours and of your people. Community temperature reading was the first skill. Then we talked about slaying the dragon of wrong assumptions, not mind reading. Then we went into the life-saving practice of clarifying expectations. And then we moved into the high-stakes decision to transform your history into a great future. We got into Genogram. Then we moved into why bottling up emotions kills spiritual growth. And then last podcast was the one skill that will make or break your life and leadership, incarnationalism.
Yep.
We've done a lot.
Yeah. So, and today's title about someone's
Staying grounded when people are driving you crazy.
Right. I mean, has anybody ever driven you crazy?
Yes, you. But I think I've driven you more crazy than you've driven me crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure most of us have people in our lives that at one time or another have driven us crazy. So this should apply to a lot of us.
But this skill was a game changer for us in every level, personally, maritally, and absolutely in our leadership, the skill of climb the ladder of integrity. So in fact, every conference we ever did live over the years, we always demonstrated this skill with pastors and leaders because it was so important. And we would give it a good hour to 2 hour block of time at every conference. And for many, it was the biggest impact of the entire conference was watching us model live with 2 people, the ladder of integrity.
Yeah. And I think the reason it had such impact was, well, for many reasons, but it really brings together like so many of the other skills. You know, you're not mind reading, you're making sure that you've clarified expectations. It's a lot about feelings and listening, and especially listening to yourself. But most importantly, it gets us to our values.
So why don't we begin today on tell everyone, honey, how this got launched, how this whole skill got developed and launched. And because like the other skills, so many of them came out of you and your story, in particular with me and others. But why don't you start with how this even got launched?
Yeah, I mean, actually, this skill came out of another skill that I had learned in a relationship course that was actually around checking out assumptions. But I realized I just kept, and it was a very helpful tool because it was more than just saying, hey, can I check out an assumption with you? It had a lot of steps to it. And I saw a lot of potential in this tool, but something significantly was missing for me. And it was getting at one's values, which really gets to the core of differentiation as a person. So over time, I realized, clarifying expectations is great, checking out assumptions is great, stop minding is great.
Incarnational listening was great.
Right. And explore the iceberg. They were all helpful for helping me grow. But I still didn't feel like I was getting at the core of differentiating as a person. And I think what I realized, what went hand in hand with differentiation was being able to identify one's values.
Okay, so why don't you tell them what was the issue that in particular with me that you had that really began to unlock this skill and begin to really get it developed in a way that's now part of the relationships, emotionally healthy relationships course?
Sure. We had been using all the skills that we had been learning up until that time and developing. And, but I wasn't able to sort of crack the nut, so to speak, on this one issue I was having around the fact that you really enjoyed watching action movies. And action movies can be very violent sometimes, and with a lot of death. And I'd be watching these movies and, you know, person's dying here and dying there and dying there. But yet there's no sense of the value of that life and the importance of that life. It was like putting life, minimizing life, because there was no grieving process involved. So anyway,
your nervous system was so agitated sometimes sitting watching these movies.
Yeah. My nervous system would be really agitated. And I was also mentally disturbed at that they were presenting this image and picture that life can be just so dispensable and disposable. But it didn't seem to impact you the same way. And so finally, I just began to work with some tools and put them together to help me get at what is it that was bothering me. And again, I think a missing piece for me was the value. There was a value here that, especially in the context of the action movies, the violence that would happen was, I have a value of honoring life, and I have a value of it not being seen as so disposable without great consequences, great impact in the lives of the people whose death and that was impacting. And so anyway, I went up, I started putting these sentence stems together to help me get it. And that's what happened. I got to the place of, I started out with my thoughts and I've got these feelings but why am I anxious? And talking to Pete about this, it just helped me begin to uncover a lot of stuff and then finally get to my value. And so, that's kind of the story of its
And then you began, if I remember, you began to write sentence stems and then you began to use it in other issues of getting at your values, your integrity. And it kind of grew. We had 17 sentence stems and 12, but you pioneered this, we call now the ladder of integrity.
Yes.
And to be able, it wasn't about conflict, it was about getting at your values. And it was very powerful. So then you came to me at one point where I really got it, really got it. As you were kind of experimenting with this, is when probably about I don't know how many years into our journey, 6 years into the emotionally healthy discipleship journey, again, you came to a place recognizing there were some things, problematic issues with New Life Fellowship leadership. And you came to me, you were on staff at the time, and I can't remember exactly how you said it, but I think it was something about, Pete, I'm not sure I can stay on staff anymore because there's some things out of order here and they're just not getting addressed.
Right. I mean, I did clearly say, I'm not going to quit the church, but like I did the first time, but there were some values of mine that were being violated, but I wasn't imposing them on you because your values could be different.
Yes.
But I needed to state my value that some things were being violated that were really important to me that would cause me to maybe not continue on staff.
And so Geri doing that really precipitated in me on a whole new level, getting at my integrity. There were a number of things that were really bothering me at church as well and leadership. And I'd been leading New Life Fellowship at that point for 17, 18 years. And I was stuck. I knew I was stuck. And I began to make a list of all the people and all the issues around which I was stuck. And it was quite a list. And I remember wrestling, getting alone. I remember staying up most of a night because it was so painful I was not living my values. And I began to take some of those sentence stems and I wanted to quit rather than address some of the problems that were in the organization. And so I don't know if you remember, honey, I came back to you and said, I'm not going to hire an executive pastor. I'm going to become the executive pastor of the church. I'm not going to, I was in the process of about to write a book. So I'm not going to write that book. I'm not going to do any more speaking anywhere. I'm going to focus on not just be the lead pastor. I'm going to do what I don't like to do, what's uncomfortable to me, and what's hard for me, which is I'm going to be the executive pastor and I'm going to get in there, write job descriptions, do job reviews, look at budgets, plan meetings differently, think about phone calls I'm going to make. I mean, the executive function of my thinking, I had never really developed it because I just thought, again, back to my Genogram family of origin, I don't know what I'm doing. So you can't do it, Pete. Yeah. You can't lead yourself out of a paper bag when it comes to this. And that's when, God gave me such a revelation through a mentor about, hey, Pete, you've done so many good things in leadership. Why couldn't you learn this? Be the executive functions of leadership. And so God gave me the lion and the bear text from 1 Samuel 17, where David says, I've slain the lion and bear. He says to Goliath, I'm going to slay you too. And so I started making a list of all the things I'd learned and kind of overcome in my leadership over the previous, couple of decades. And it was quite a good list. I said, okay, this is a Goliath. I'm going to learn to be executive leader as well. And it was just gigantic.
Yeah, oh my goodness, of course I do. I remember you announcing it and in our staff meeting that you're going to be taking on this other role now, because it was sort of vacant. It was a vacant spot, and and I knew the implications for me. Like, holy smokes! Now he's going to be doing two jobs. He's going to be the lead pastor and the executive pastor. But I knew it was going to be we had agreed it would be for a certain amount of time. But I had so much more peace in knowing that you were going to live out of the integrity of getting in there in the staff team and addressing things that needed to be addressed. I was taking so much more life from the fact that we were living out of integrity by you doing that. And so it was okay to have those two big jobs. And yes, it was going to impact me, but I'd rather have that impact. I'd rather have the impact of you doing two jobs for a period of time with an end versus you not addressing staff issues, which was a lack of integrity for me. That was worse.
So this tool that we're going to talk about today, the ladder of integrity, God used it. I got a therapist. I did a round of therapy. I got some mentors, but I had been avoiding a lot of hard conversations, a lot of difficult decisions. And it was really hurting not just me, not just you, but the rest of our leadership staff and the whole church and the whole movement forward in terms of mission. And it was a revolution. It was a revolution for me. And actually the whole Emotionally Healthy Leader book was written out of that years later. So let's do this. Let's talk about the tool for a few minutes, and then we'll go into 4 or 5 key leadership applications of what this climb the ladder of integrity, how it can be used when people are driving you crazy.
Yeah. So what got me so excited about this tool was that up till that point, we had developed the tools that have gone before this one, but we'd never gotten to something called values. And I realized, in our families, we didn't learn how to clarify expectations. Most of our families did mind reading and make assumptions. Most of us in our families didn't learn how to speak clearly, respectfully. And most of our families didn't teach us how to listen. But those things all seem like they could be taught and learned. But values, identifying your values always seems something like too intangible to me. But now I was realizing, we have a way of helping people. The next step is to not only, be able to do these other tools to help them with important things for themselves and relationships, but it is so important to my individuation to be able to identify my values. That also is important for loving well God, yourself, and neighbor. And so anyway, I was just really excited because there's so few things that help you identify your values.
So, okay, why don't you just take them through it? What's the purpose of it?
Right. So, but in order to get to your value, there's other things that have to precede that. And so, again, you need to watch the course and this session to get the full breadth of what we're talking about and to get the specifics of what we're talking about. We can't do it here. But generally, overall, the ladder has a progression. And the first part of, let's say it's in thirds. Yeah, but I would say it's kind of in thirds. Like the first third of the ladder is really identifying what is going on inside of me. What are my thoughts? Like, what's the issue? What am I anxious about? What are my feelings? But then that leads you to after you kind of explore what's going on in yourself, the point is exploring all of this and getting all of this so you can uncover your value. And so that's right at the core of the tool of the ladder. And then you actually move into what I might hope for as for myself and, the issue, as you end the ladder.
So you use it when someone's driving you crazy. If something's driving you crazy, something's really bothering you and irritating you, but you're not sure exactly what it is. Right. You're frustrated. So
right.
That's why if you're in leadership, this is a really important tool. So, for example,
Can I just pause you for a moment?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. So the reason, yes, it is for when somebody is driving you crazy, but what tends to happen when someone is driving us crazy, our usual response is actually reactivity.
Yes.
Now, the other person might not see your reactivity, or they might see your reactivity. It might be outward, or it might be just happening on the inside of you. There's all sorts of ways our reactivity happens when something is disturbing to us, whether it was a comment or whether it was a whole project. And so, so I just, again, this letter of integrity is meant to help us not be reactive, because a lot of times, not to be blaming, because many times, not all the times, many times the reason we're reactive is because something important to us has been violated.
So, for example, let me give you some examples. You respond back. So, just everybody, you can download a free copy of the tool itself. Just go to emotionallyhealthy.org/ladder. And you can download the tool and at least look at it. Now, of course, we want you to do the whole emotionally healthy relationships course.
Yes.
And all 8 to 9 skills that we're talking about here in this podcast, because it's such a core part of spiritual formation for churches, for families, and for leadership. But if you want to just taste what we're talking about here, you can download the tool at emotionallyhealthy.org/ladder. It's a one-page thing. It'll be very helpful for you. So say, for example, an issue, Geri, I have a team member who's always showing up late to staff meetings week after week. So I'm really bothered by it, but I'm not sure what to do with it. I climb the ladder, and I may discover that one of my values is respecting everybody's time. And if I'm leading a meeting, that we start and end on time and are respectful.
Or just even simply, I have a value of being told ahead of time that, someone's going to be late or something like that, because that their lateness may be impacting the whole meeting, kind of a thing.
So let's say you're out to dinner with someone and they're always texting during the meal. Okay. And it's really bothering you. So how might the ladder help me then, or you in that case? What might be an example of how the ladder could help you unearth a value and a way to maybe approach the situation?
Yeah, well, it's going to help me identify my value of that you value time with me enough to focus on me and not your phone. So
yeah, it's great. Okay, there's lots of examples, right? So we'll go into when we do some applications. Or in my case, I had some people who were in roles in the church, either as volunteers or paid, that were not doing their role. They were not doing what they were meant to do, whether it's be a youth volunteer or children's worker or administration. And they're saying they're doing something, but they're not. And I wouldn't say anything because I don't want to hurt their feelings. And the ladder really helped me say, no, I really value that we have integrity as a church. And especially if we're paying someone, that they're doing the job they're being paid for with the church's funds. And that my role as a lead pastor was to be stewarding that, not just their financial resources, but people's time, energy as well.
You also value honesty.
I do value honesty. It really helped me stop lying.
Yeah.
It did. So climb the ladder of integrity. This tool is so tremendous because it helps you get honest and clear. It's helped me to help now thousands of others get honest and clear about what's really going on inside of you.
Yes.
And what the values that's being violated.
The title is a little deceiving, okay, about
it's true.
When others are driving you crazy, because it sounds like
It's their fault.
It's not their fault. It's about them. But the ladder is not about them. The ladder is about me, about you, about what's going on. Because it seems like if somebody's driving you crazy, it's their problem, but it's actually my problem.
Exactly.
Because they might be doing the same thing with somebody else and it's not driving them crazy, but it's driving me crazy because there's something in it usually of a value for me that's being violated.
Well said, honey. Well said. All right, let's do 4 leadership applications. Okay. We'll go back and forth here. The first is that the ladder of integrity is a powerful tool to live with integrity and out of one's values every day, daily. And few of us have been taught how to do that. Of course, we see that beautifully in the life of Jesus, who was so centered, so anchored, lived out of his values of what the Father had given him to do. And he was at peace and content and was able to move along amidst so much pressure of people who had agendas for his life and different values than he did.
Oh, man, it led to such boldness and courage on his part.
I mean, amazing. I just read this morning in my own time with Jesus morning prayer that he goes to dine at a Pharisee's house and he does not wash his hands like was expected. And they get upset. And he says, you clean the outside of the cup and dish, but you're not concerned about what's on the inside. And he just lived according to his values, and he makes a point. It's very, very powerful. Okay, so why don't you, honey, living with congruence and integrity. This first one about it's a powerful tool to live with integrity. You had mentioned, I mentioned this to you, about you and the environment. And how that's walked out.
Sure. I mean, no, just very.
And food.
Food. Yeah. I mean, 2 simple examples for me is that I will do or not do certain things because of my value of the environment. You know, like we want to use sustainable materials, and you know, we want to compost, and you know, there's a lot of things we do in our life because of our value of the environment. And there's certain things I won't do because of my value of the environment. Another value I recently found out that I have and I'm trying to act on is, you know, when we go out to dinner, I've been disappointed so many times, not because of Pete, but because of the environment. We've gone out to dinner, and even a simple dinner can cost a lot of money, especially in New York City. And not only is it a lot of money, and maybe the food wasn't that great, and it's noisy as anything, that we can't really even enjoy conversation. And especially if that's with other people, a few more people. But even when we've gone out by ourselves and, you know, the next table is 6 inches away from us. And I realized, you know, I have a value of how I spend my money for the purpose of having us experience communion with each other and good food when we go out. So I guess part of my value is, my value is to know where I'm going, what's happening in that restaurant before I go. So I'm not just throwing away my money or precious communion time for us.
Yeah. And the holidays. For me, last Thanksgiving, I had a value when we were with our grandchildren and our children and son-in-laws that I wanted to have some special time or some container that we would share Thanksgiving, gratefulness. But we had 5 children, 7 years and under with us, which is really challenging. But we were able to carve out a time, about an hour actually, around a fire.
Miraculously. Because 4 of them took naps at the same time.
And it was fantastic. And we had a really great time. But it really came out of, I was struggling and wrestling before that get together. This is really important value for me for this day we're going to have together. And it worked. It was great.
But not only did it just, I mean, it was miraculous that they all slept like an hour and a half. But then you initiated, said, okay, here we are as adults. I want to invite you to do this. And they were very,
great.
And so again, if you are, one of the signs that you need to do a ladder, so to speak, or a ladder could be helpful, is when you've got angst in your side of yourself and you become aware of that angst, but you're not quite sure, you know, what it's all about. And that's when the ladder is really helpful. And there's a lot of angst around the holidays.
Let's do Christmas.
Well, I know. So I realized when you were talking about Thanksgiving, like, oh yeah, I mean, our family will be getting together at Christmas, and have we identified our different values for that time together so that we can, honor that and honor that in each other. So that's something I think I want to pursue.
Yeah. And we've begun to have conversations about how we might want to do gift giving going into this Christmas. So fantastic. All right. A second application for leadership around the ladder of integrity is this, that it is a tremendous tool for helping us discern God's will for our lives. In other words, our sealed orders that God has for us. So last September, for example, Geri and I went away for a weekend. 3 days, 4 days, I don't know, a few days. But it was really about discernment. And I was getting in touch with my values of how I wanted to spend my time. Now, Emotionally Healthy Discipleship is a global organization. I'm the leader of it, the CEO of it. And there's lots of things that need to be done. At the same time, I felt there's this things inside of me that God had given me to do. And I was feeling conflicted because I wasn't getting them because of some of the demands. And so we spent a couple of days, 4 days, but a couple of days really focused on what are the values that God's put in me that are really God's voice for me. And then how can I begin to make some steps to move towards that?
Yeah, I just remember there being such a jumble of things that were happening, especially in your life, and looking at the year calendar, and I could see the jumbleness of it. And I think I think you need to do a ladder around your values to bring some of this into better focus as to what is most important.
And how significant has that been? Now it's 3 months later.
Very significant.
Very significant.
Yeah.
Really significant. Has tremendous ripple effect. Okay. Number 3, it's an incredible tool, the ladder of integrity, for discipleship and leadership development. Now, it can be used so many situations. Now, why did we do it at every conference? Why did every leadership conference, pretty much every year, we would work with 2 people and have them model it live. A person walk through the ladder in front of hundreds of other pastors and leaders.
Well, I'd love to hear your answer to that first.
Well, I want to hear your answer to that second. Because it gave, first of all, it was live, and so people could see how difficult it was. But it was a live model of there's another way of living that's reflective, thoughtful, wrestles with God and oneself, so that you're living out of a deep integrity with God and yourself in other relationships. And it frees everyone around you. It's not about blaming. It's not about criticizing anyone. It's about living the life God's given you to live. Yeah. And so we could tell so many stories here of people's stories, but it's so powerful to see people get free to live their authentic selves in Christ as leaders.
Right.
And then you see the ripple it has in a whole team and even a church.
Right. And now the ladder is not a one and done. In other words, you kind of go up the ladder, but because it's all about you exploring what's going on inside of you. And that's not usually going to take place in one, 20-minute thing.
Exactly.
And so although we did demonstrate it at the conference, what people didn't see, although we told them, that the hours that Pete spent with the person who was sharing their ladder. And that's why it was such a mentoring tool. Yeah. Because if I have to describe biblically what the ladder is, I would say it is take the log out of your own eye before you take the speck out of your neighbor's. And so Pete was spending hours with helping a person unpack their thoughts, their feelings, the anxiety, et cetera, and all getting to why this issue is important to them. But, again, things have layers.
That's the truth.
So
you can go up at 7. We went up, people could do the ladder 7, 8, 9 times to get at other levels. Why didn't we ever say that so clearly in the videos for the relationship course, that it's about taking the log out of your own eye? And
that's why it's such a self-transfer. It can be a self-transformational tool, because you realize like, oh, wow, there is a lot going on beneath the surface of me and in me that has nothing to do with that other person. And actually, it's very freeing. You're free from blaming them. You're free from reacting from them. You're simply uncovering you get to a value. And then you're left with, if you do want to share this with him, you're sharing with them, you're sharing your value. You're not attacking, you're not blaming. And it was really...
It's fantastic. All right, let's do the last one as we close here. A great leadership application, if not the greatest, is that ladder is a powerful tool to grow and mature in differentiation. Now, I've got a couple of great examples. Now, differentiation is our capacity to define our goals in life and calling apart from the pressures around us. So it's remaining connected to people, yet not allowing their behaviors or reactions to control us. And so, this is hard work, but the ladder is a tremendous tool to mature and grow in differentiation, because as you use the stems, some of them we find out are very helpful to help us get clear on, this is what God's calling me to do. This is what it meant. This is what I want. This is what I long for. This is what I value. So I have a list of examples for me, and I'll mention a few, and then you can jump in with yours. So I allowed, for example, prior to getting a hold of my own integrity and differentiation level growing, I would allow people to function in leadership and power that really shouldn't have been in power and leadership. And I was just afraid of upsetting the apple cart. And I didn't want to rock boats. But I began to, when someone would say even a fellow elder would say an inappropriate remark at an elder meeting that was maybe sarcastic or hurtful, I wouldn't let it slide anymore. I would call that person. I could think of one in particular in the past. I called them and had a discussion about it. But it was my value of, we're going to function at a very high level here as a board, and nothing slides.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, what comes to mind is how I discovered, 7 years, I guess at least 7 years after planning New Life, which was day and night, with all sorts of needs, just surrounded by a sea of needs constantly, that I needed nature for my wholeness. Like, I needed nature for my mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health. And that getting my value of nature is so important for my health that it's a non-negotiable. I must have that as part of my life. But it wasn't.
Yes.
Before those, first 7-8 years, nor did I even know how to identify a value. So that was really important for me.
I recently, if you remember, honey, we have a board at Emotional Healthy Discipleship. And about a year ago, realized we needed to transition from what's called a founder's board, our first 10 years, to more of a wider, broader board as we begin to build out EH Discipleship for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So I asked 2 people on the board to step off the board, and these people I love, so that we could have room for some other people to come on. And we actually added 4 new people as those 2 stepped off. But it took a bit of differentiation on my part. Again, it was the value of, I'm stewarding the organization for the long-term whole. Yes, they're my friends, but my first responsibility is to steward in a sense, all that God has entrusted to us for the global church in the years to come.
Right. So it does bring out the need for differentiation, and certainly increases your differentiation level. And it also brings out your true self.
That's true. So to end our time, we want to really encourage you to do this course. Even if you do it with, 5 to 10 people to start, but it's a course.
Yes.
And that you go to our website and learn how to do it as a course.
Yeah.
At emotionallyhealthy.org/training. We've got this wealth of training materials of how do you lead it. It's not complicated, but it is serious.
Right. And again, you want to go through it first yourself as a leader with some other folks. And the reason we call it a course is because there's several aspects to it. There's not just meeting once a week to go through the study, but there's the daily office, there's homework, there's practicing, whatever. So it's all those things together that make it powerful. And you can't cut corners and just do part of it or some of it.
And don't explain how all 8 skills fit together. It's a pyramid. Everything we've been talking about in the podcast. So we want you to do all the course.
Yeah, all the course. Oh, right. All 8 sessions.
All 8 sessions.
Yeah, all 8 sessions. But in each session, you know, has a lot to it. And like we said, in terms of homework and practicing the skill and readings and daily office, and all those things are important.
And the great thing is once you get the workbook, the videos are free. You can download them. You can stream them for free once you buy yourself the workbook, and day by day. You can get that anywhere. But if you're not ready quite for that, you can just download the Ladder of Integrity, which is what we've been talking about today. Just go to emotionallyhealthy.org/ladder, and you can get the one-page ladder with this 12-sentence stems, and that'll at least give you a sense of what we've been talking about throughout this podcast.
Right. And actually, just to end, here's a picture of it. There it is, the ladder.
Thank you, honey. It was great to be with you, everybody. Thank you so much. God bless you. You have a wonderful day.